Good morning, and today is January the 14th, 2026. It is about 10:11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. For the record, I am Yahweh Elohim, Yahuwah, or Joshua, and my last name is Graham. That is the Tetragrammaton. Also, linguistically speaking, the definition of Graham in the ancient Paleo-Hebrew is exalted one. So, today I will be getting my own Wikipedia page, because as always, I've waited on the public to try to do something for me in any capacity, but apparently that never happens. So, it's left up to me. But, one way or the other, the world will know who I am, why I'm here, and what I'm doing. So before we'll reverse it today, so we will cover some more domestic things, because again, a part of the video is I want people to not only know me, right, from the Bible, of course, but you should also get to know your Elohim, meaning your God, in person. So, we are a thrifty family, so we try to combine meals. So last night I did a chicken parmesan, and the night before I made fresh chicken cutlets. So fresh packaged chicken breasts, sliced them, trimmed the fat, and then basically we don't fry anything in our house, so everything is either baked or stir fried. So again, we try to keep it healthy. And an interesting fact about my family, or at least my blood, so Asherah and Cameron and Jay, we all share something unique together. Most people have issues with too much sodium, and they have to reduce sodium. The four of us, we actually have an issue with keeping sodium in. So we have to actually eat substantially more salt than most people. And it's interesting, because years and years ago, I haven't been to a doctor in at least 5 years. But most of my life, same with Asherah and the kids, every time any of us have ever had blood work, it always came back with low sodium. So anyway, we have heavily salted meals, but again, that is actually what it takes to keep us healthy. So, anyway, point is, so I made chicken cutlets the night before last, had leftovers, and instead of, cooking up more chicken for the Alfredo, I took the leftover cutlets, warmed them up, and then basically, used that as the chicken. It came out excellent, absolutely excellent. So tonight we are going to, and Asherah Sunday, she made this amazing roast beef sliders. So simple, so easy, and it's not that we're inventing these recipes, not at all. Asherah got a cookbook, a Pioneer Woman cookbook. That's kind of our kitchen theme, is the Pioneer Woman. It's like a Walmart brand, I guess. I don't know, but good quality, and her cookbooks are really, really unique. You get a lot of cookbooks with your very basics, but the Pioneer Woman lady, has some really unique recipes. So we really enjoyed the roast beef sliders. It had, I think it was a Monterey type of cheese, but anyway, gosh, it came out absolutely delicious. A little bit of a butter sauce on top of the Swiss Hawaiian rolls, and then you bake it. It was phenomenal. I think we had that with some with just some French fries, but it was really good. And so that helps, right? That helps keep our budget in check, because if I can use leftovers and combine it with another meal, I'm not only saving money, but I'm saving refrigerator space, you see? And then we don't waste money on things like soft drinks or whatever. I mean, the kids drink apple juice and chocolate milks and stuff. I have a juice, a fruit juice that I drink if I'm not drinking coffee or water. And then Asherah is just coffee, tea, and water. So there you go. There's a little insight into my personal family and our preferences. Okay. So we will jump into it then. So one of the big topics, obviously, there's a lot of big topics between Iran, the revolution, Greenland, the soon-to-be talks, and, the situation in Minneapolis. There's a lot of gears that are turning, but if you're looking at things from me out, right, that's another thing. So think about this, from God to man. Imagine if you're standing looking at me, right? You're standing in your own opinions, your own thought, your own, essentially what's called cultural bias, or your own human bias, really. Because humans, by being human beings, you guys have natural biases against me, for me, towards me, whatever. So it truly does. It makes my job difficult. So in that regard, an easy way for a follower, a patron, a believer, or a person who's in one of my religions, right, Judaism or Christianity. So then a good way to try to understand is I want you to step on my side of the line. Truly. So don't try to stand, across, and then you're not seeing from my point of view. You're looking through jaded glasses, right? You're using your life experiences to guide you. You're using your important people in your life to guide you. You're using a lot of things that in the human domain have been your steady, firm ground or your foundational learnings. One of my biggest gripes right now is that the foundational learnings most of the time have been corrupted, not necessarily on purpose. So that's another thing. A lot of times it's just time. And these things have tails. And now the fruit that is being bared by the world, religions included, everything, the fruit is sour. The fruit is lacking the nutrients. It's lacking, in human terms, righteousness. Righteousness to me is Elohim. Righteousness to me is Elohim on earth. Is so important. It's so important because if you could look at it in a parable, imagine I bought Asherah a raised garden bed for Christmas. So me and her had a wonderful time putting that together. It was a lot of fun doing something as a team. Something I encourage all married couples, or if you're not married, hopefully you're not engaged in sex if you're not married, but if you're in a courtship, right? If you're seeing each other, something to that effect, right? You should do an activity together, like me and my wife. And it helps build good communication. It helps build cooperation. And hey, there's nothing better than getting up early on a Sunday or a Saturday, and you and your spouse tackling a project together. You're putting in some sweat equity, and at the end, she was so confident, not confident, but she was so happy that it came out perfect. So kudos to the garden bed I found on Amazon. Even though we have Prime, the shipping was still about $40, but it was way worth it. Way worth it. Because I was going to build her one from scratch. And the only reason I didn't is because the raw material, if I went to Lowe's, I priced it out. It was going to cost me over $200 to build her one. So I ended up getting better material, cedar wood, pre-cut, pre-drilled, from Amazon, shipping included for about $140. So it really did came out to be a win-win. But as I'm teaching her, so every day, one of her first things that she does, right, is obviously most adults in this day and age, right, coffee is kind of the centerfold of the morning, at least for us. So for me, I like to watch coffee. I watch the news a little bit, but even before that, we go out and we look at the garden together. And we are meticulously pulling a leaf out here. We're tending the garden on a daily basis, ensuring the soil never gets dried out, because that can directly negatively impact the crops. Right now we have green beans, carrots, spinach, strawberries, 2 types of lettuce on one side. So the garden bed is pretty big. That's all on one side. And then the other side is just herbs. We have basil, oregano, rosemary. I don't even know exactly all of them. But anyway, everything in the garden is perfect. It's not only growing strong, everything is very fertile. The soil is rich in nutrients, but she understands if we neglect that garden just for one day, and we have by accident, not by accident, but we've gotten busy and, we had to get out of the house at certain points, like really early. My point is, if you let it slip just for one day and then you come back, there's more leaves, right? Then there's things that are happening to your garden that you don't even recognize, right? But little by little, a little infection here could get onto the plant, and the plant begins to die or to suffer, and then you're having to trim it and trim it and trim it, right? Which at the end makes your harvest smaller and smaller and smaller. So the more you're neglecting it, the smaller your harvest. This is how I, as Elohim, God, look at humanity when it comes to your righteousness. So again, this is hopefully going to teach Christians a little bit more about it. And again, I want these to be a positive interaction, because at the source, I truly not only care, but I am more than vested. I am all in. I am all in to getting the creation to where it needs to be. That's my focus point. That's my goal, right? And I understand, and I want you to understand, that righteousness comes right there at the top of the list, right? The 3 number 1 things, right? Knowing the name of your creator. That's Yahweh, Elohim, Yahuwah, who I am in the flesh, right? That's number 1. And again, these go back to commandments. And then number 2, right? Obeying the 10 commandments. And that does not necessarily mean, especially for Christians or Gentiles, that you need to follow a food law. You don't need to do that. You don't need to change your Sunday services. These are things that have happened. And as Elohim, there are bigger fish to fry than me worrying about the small details like that. Right? As I said, I embrace Christmas not as any kind of a religious type of thing, right? And there are holidays that people celebrate that have nothing to do with religion. Martin Luther King Day is coming up. That has in no way really a form of religion behind it. I mean, he was a religious person, like Martin Luther King was obviously a reverend, and a good one at that. But I'm just saying, knowing the name of your Elohim, obeying the 10 commandments, and carrying out righteousness. Now, I don't want Christians to think that is not what's classified under works. That's classified under responsibility. That is your job duties as a steward. So truly, if you're going to go through the trouble of having a garden, you're taking upon a responsibility to say, it's my job as the gardener to ensure my plants are healthy, to make sure that there's no pests getting into my garden bed, that my plants aren't dying because I'm watering them, I'm caring for them, I'm cleaning the garden, I'm ensuring its safety. It's going to freeze tonight. We're going to have to cover the garden bed up. There are things that you must pay attention to, that you must keep top of mind. Now, in our direct house, we have obviously the garden bed, and I've got plants all throughout the home that have been alive. They're house plants. They've been alive for years, so they're getting long. I've got tails on some of them that are, 4 feet long. And so it adds more work, but that is a good thing. So many humans today, Asher and I were just talking about this before she hopped on her meeting, is I made an association with, righteousness, and we're talking, and I said something to the equivalent. I was like, it's like humans are like cats on catnip right now, right? And they're all busy playing with cat toys. And it's very difficult if you've ever interacted with a cat. I don't have cats. I'm not a cat person. I'm a dog person. But, so But if you ever know cats, right, when they eat catnip and then they're playing with their toys, like, they're unstoppable, right? If you try to go in there and mess with that cat while he's playing with a toy or she's playing with a toy, usually you're going to get your hand clawed up, right? That cat is like, I'm in the game of playing with that toy, don't mess with me. That's how a lot of human beings are, but instead of catnip and cat toys, you could look at this in different ways. One, if you're getting hopped up on religion, right? You're getting hopped up on falsehoods. You're getting hopped up on false stories. You're embracing false doctrine. That's dangerous. That's ignoring the garden. That's ignoring your responsibilities as a human being to have a full understanding of who your God is, and also ignoring who you as a human being are, a steward of the creation, and what purpose you serve to the heavens, but also how it benefits you as an individual. And when the individual prospers, everybody else will begin to prosper, because it is all not chained, but it is all linked together. So in my garden, in Asher's garden bed, if she just tended to the one side and said, well, I'm not going to pay any attention to the herbs because, the green beans are more exciting to look at. The carrots are more exciting. Like, I know that might sound stupid, but it's not. Because people that I see in the spirit, when I'm going through a lot of Christian churches, Jewish churches, it doesn't matter, guys. That's what I mean. You're human beings. Before you're a Christian, you're a human being. Before you're a Jew, you're a human being. And that's where we need to start the growth. And beginning the growth, right? Having a firm understanding of righteousness is so important to me, because it is so important to your growth. And at times when your righteousness is challenged, right, then that's where you're met at crossroads and people are choosing the wrong road now, hand over fist. I'm trying to change that, because I don't need people, poo-pooing righteousness because my pastor said that I'm saved by the blood of Jesus and that, works. Guys, works is something to the effect of saying, if you sacrifice me 10 bulls, okay, right, you can go back to ignoring your garden. That doesn't make any sense, does it? No. I'm a very logical God. That's for sure. If you look at creation, that's what I mean. So people that want to start their journey with me, a good way is just start at your creation. It doesn't matter where you're at in the world. Find a piece of nature and study that nature. You will begin to understand my nature. Everything in the creation is recyclable. The creation itself recycles everything, right? The tree starts off as a seed. The tree grows and grows and grows, and eventually it gets old, it will die, but then it lends itself to bugs, beetles, different inhabitants. There could be hundreds of different insects that inhabit that tree. There are birds that are going to flock to that tree. Woodpeckers are going to peck that wooden tree that's dying to get those insects. And then eventually, right, the winds will come and blow that old tree down, and then that tree will then become food for millions of bugs, and then millions of bugs are going to feed millions of birds. But it doesn't stop there. That tree is going to begin to recycle itself into the ground. The ground will receive the tree again. And then nutrients, the things that keep all things alive, right? You need those nutrients, and those nutrients are going to fertilize more growth. So when you look at it in a reel, let's look at a tree in 1,000-year fast camera type of thing, right? So boom, you see the tree grow, it's magnificent. When it's in its strong heyday, all the birds are flocking to the branches, and the branches are strong, and it can hold as many birds as will come. And it provides shelter from the rain. It provides shelter for the squirrels. It provides shade for the deer to come and huddle under it. It provides, protection from the storm when, animals in general. That's when the tree is at its strength. It's a shelter, right? But then as the tree ages, and you're seeing it in the fast frame, it's beginning to come down and rot and fall. And then you see it fall, boom, and then the cameras, again, It's just absorbing into the ground, but then you see more trees growing from it, more plants and more fauna, and boom. It's a cycle, guys. It's the circle of life. And human beings, if you want to say, what is the honey in which you produce? It's righteousness. It's doing the right thing. It's tending to that garden religiously. That is what religiously means. Constant. Like the earth does not break its orbit. Like the stars do not fall. All these things are relying upon religious constant. Constant. This is not to appease me. This is to assist you. So anybody walking into a church on a Saturday or Sunday, they better be able to walk out, at a minimum, learning something. That's the point. You should be learning more and more about righteousness, one way or the other. Through examples, hopefully your pastor, your teachers, your preachers, your priests are emphasizing that you love me by obedience to the commandments. I said this. Jesus, Yeshua, said this. All of the prophets have harped on this exact subject. And it is the hardest for humanity to come around, because humanity, the world in which you live, the fake world, essentially has sold you a false reality. And this is where we get in the weeds a little bit, so stay with me. The false reality says, well, you know what? You did a naughty and you did 90 and a 45, but if you pay the money, hey, you're cool. You're cool. We're not going to give you a lecture because you paid the ticket, right? They've made money an eraser of your sin. And then the human thinks, oh, I'm good, right? Because in the eyes of the law, I just got to pay my fine and I'm off to do my thing. The problem is, why were you breaking the law to begin with, human? What was in your mind? What was in your heart? What was in your soul that made you desire to do something like that? Did you not realize how dangerous that is? Did you not realize you're putting yourself and others at risk? Did you not realize all these things? You see what I mean? So money doesn't erase your sin. And mankind, having unlimited mercy upon, their constituents or even their leaders, you're doing yourselves a disservice. You see what I mean? None of you are treating things at the root. Most people are treating things superficially. And that is a problem. That is a problem, right? And that's what I need to change within humanity. Because if humanity can wake up and smell the roses and go, we need to learn the basics. God is all about pulling people to the good side, pulling people to be the light. What is the light? The light is called being an example. Are you being an exemplary citizen? Are you being an exemplary Christian or an exemplary Jew? Or are you going around with taunting bumper stickers, Jesus loves you, but I can't stand you? That's not being Christ-like. That's not being Christ-like. If you're a Jew who's afraid to talk to a Christian, then you're not being godlike. So godlike and Christ-like are actually the same thing. So a famous picture that was from years ago, it had the number 9 or it was the number 6, but there was two people standing at the opposite edge. And true blue, right? The person standing from this angle is it's a 9. Any idiot can see it's a 9. But then if you walked around the other side, that guy's it's a 6. Any idiot can say that that's a 6, not a 9, right? And so they're arguing. And literally they're just looking at something from a different perspective. So what is the Bible about? It is about Yahweh Elohim, from Genesis to Malachi, right? What is the New Testament teaching you? It's reteaching you righteousness. It's reteaching you to rekindle the relationship with Almighty Yahweh, who is I, and by doing so, obeying those commands. That is what gets my attention. That is what angels are constantly working a path for. Funny story, and then we'll jump into the actual topics of the day. So, my mother, as I've mentioned on other videos, that was a nice one. My mother is, she's funny. And as I kind of call her, I'm like, you're the modern day Mary. So I'm like, you get to have like kind of the exclusivity of being in like a club of two. And so she was telling me, she was like, and she calls me Joshua. So she's like, Joshua. She was like, I was praying in the car the other day. She's like, and I'm not kidding you. She's like, I heard your voice answer me. She made it funny. And she's like, but that wasn't the weird part. She's like, that wasn't the weird part. She was like, the weird part was, she's like, I keep feeling a presence. She's like, but not like a bad presence. She's like, I keep feeling like, she used to play this Candy Crush game on her phone, right? That was like her addiction. My mother loved to play this Candy Crush game. And she's like, I just, for some reason, don't want to play the Candy Crush game anymore. She's like, I just can't do it. I don't even want to pick up a phone anymore. She's like, I'm just enjoying the peace. She's like, but when I'm enjoying the peace, I feel this presence. And this presence keeps kind of like pushing me to do something or to she goes, and it's hard to explain. Anyway. And so she thought she was losing her mind. And I told her, I was like, no, I have an angel stationed with you. The angel's to keep you out of trouble, right? Keep you on the straight and narrow, and to give you like warnings, right? To prevent you from falling out of that path. Anyway, so it was very comforting to her to know that, and then just kind of reaffirming for her. But my point is, her amount of stress. She was feeling, in a way, fearful. She was feeling anxiety. She was because she didn't understand it. But once I explained it to her very simply, right, that it's an angel, right? You are inhabiting with a actual angel that I, as your son, but as your Elohim, have assigned you. And that angel is cleaning, it's keeping her away from people that I don't want her around, because those people are unrighteous. Those people have in the past led her not necessarily to sin directly. But guys, there's a lot of things in the world that's unsavory, right? There really is. Again, and I do go back to a very big problem, right, which is sexual sin. Sexual immorality is a major problem with humankind, and we're never going to get into the high mind as long as people are exploiting sex, if they're pursuing things of the flesh, because guess what you end up with? You end up with Jeffrey Epstein's, and they are monsters. So people that are starting out with pornography, that is a huge no-no. That is a sin. That is an absolute never, ever, ever thing. If you're undressing men or women in your mind, then that's an issue, right? You need to seek out counsel. If you are non-religious, that is a problem in some ways, and I'll explain why. Because if you were to go to the world and ask for help, the world is going to give you false responses. A psychiatrist would just reinforce, well, as long as you're not pursuing children, then, pornography's fine. That's the world. And the world is going to constantly encourage you to walk down paths that will end you up in sin. That's what I mean. Asher and I are watching the Boy Meets World show. It was a show back in the 90s. I really enjoy the characters Corey and Topanga when they are, like, as a unit. I like seeing that, even as young children, because the world, and the episode we watched last night really did, it made me happy, and the other half, it made me very concerned. But I'm able to even see the parts of society, the last 50 years, when it has begun to pivot. When you can actually see a new director that for the first 5 seasons, one director was directing the show. It had a level of righteousness. Then it changed director, and the next episode you can clearly see that the directives are different. It is now okaying sin. In fact, it's shaming traditional value over the world. In the episode, what happened was Corey and Topanga are trying to get married. They just graduated high school. They're both virgins. Thank you. And they want to get married because they're going to go to college. Absolute love that plan. They have been together for a decade or more already, right? They are true love. Absolutely. Get married. You found your person. You found your person. You found your person. That just makes me glow with enjoyment, right? And now, if you're getting married young, prepare yourself for a great, healthy, long journey. That's going to include some highs and some lows. And as long as both people are walking into it with God first on their mind, right? Righteousness, godliness, cleanliness, pureness, then they're going to be able to overcome every single battle that life could ever throw at them. And they're going to be able to do it 2 times as fast and 2 times as strong because they're a unit. I said that. A man goes and leaves his mother to become one with his wife, right? That's what I mean. And then your husband and wife, you're inseparable. And in the show, it really, I mean, I didn't get upset physically, but it was bothersome, right? Because in the show, you see Corey and Topanga, that's what they want to do. And then the family gets wind of it. And the family is not only pushing back, but they're like, oh my gosh, this is a terrible idea. This is wrong. They're stupid. They're insane. And then they're going so far as to say they haven't even had other partners yet. And I mean, obviously, Ashera has looked at me and she's like, oh gosh. And then she's like, you want to still watch the show? And I was like, well, let's carry on. But anyway, and that, that puts things in a perfect perspective of how we've gotten to this place now in the modern world. Media, that show was watched by millions of people, millions of moldable teenagers or young people. They watched that show, and guess what? They took away from that show? They took away that, okay, so don't try to find my one and true love when I'm young. No, I need to go out and have multiple partners. I need to test it out. And then make sure that, and even in the episode, right, Corey's mom wants to, and she shames Topanga and says instead of marrying my son early as 2 virgins that are in love with each other who want to go to college together and eventually they're going to make love, then you need to do that when you're married, right? What a beautiful thing. Only for the mom to shame Topanga and say, you should have chose Yale. So the world is telling all my sheep, you should put college before your significant other. Guys, college isn't going to console you on your deathbed. College is not going to be there to help birth children. College is not going to be there to get through the challenges of the world. College is a necessary component. My daughter's going to college. She's going to Southeastern University in Lakeland. Other than not going there. The point is, the world, through music, through media, has trained my humans to be wicked, and you guys are thinking it's right, when in fact, as God on earth, it infuriates me because it breaks my heart. And as soon as I heard that episode last night again, I slept a few hours. But that was my next thing. And that's why I expose myself to all elements of the current world, because I need to know every crook and every cranny of where things began. Because what's a root? The root is the closest thing to the seed. I, as God, need to go in there and I need to root out every seed, every root that is not leading to righteousness, if it leads to premarital sex, if it leads to disobedience, dishonoring your mother and your father, if it's leading to breaking a commandment, that's a root. I've got to rip it out and pull it out. And it's sad because most of these seeds and these roots, the humans that carry them, they don't even know why, right? They don't even know why, because in their mind, they're like, I listened to my parents and I waited till I was, that's what I mean. Like, parents have led so many children astray thinking they were doing right. Those children have now grown up, already ingrained, taught, and trained highly well into sin and into the world. And now we're about 5 or 6 generations into this. That's where people are calling good evil and evil good. You see what I mean? And that's the worrisome part for me as Elohim, because guys, a part of the physical laws that govern the universe, heaven and earth, a part of those things is everything has phases, right? A human life, you have a soul. That soul is created so you as an individual can be fulfilling by extending yourself into righteousness, into the creation. If a mom and a dad are raising up truly righteous children, that is what needs to go viral. That is what needs to go viral. Not this reality TV that is truly, and I hate to say this because I feel like it makes me sound hokey, but I try to also balance things with education versus understanding. I don't want to preach above my audience. I want to truly connect with you where you understand it and it makes sense. So, excuse me. Choked onto my own spit. So, that's really where, the Corey and Topangas of the world were led astray by their parents, right? You see what I mean? How nefarious this is. This is how the devil, or not even the devil, like, that's another thing. We got to stop pinning everything on Satan, because Satan is one person with very little power. And at the end of the day, it really is a battle of the self. It's a battle of good versus evil. But where does it start? It starts with every human being. Babies aren't born to be murderers. They're not born to be fornicators. They're not born to be porn addicts. They're not born to be liars. They're not born to be thieves. They're not born to be all the things that humans end up being. Where does it come from? Well, if the person has a parent, even what this world would call righteous parents, in my eyes, are usually very unrighteous still. Very unrighteous still. And I get this, because Asherah and I, we debate this all the time, right? And in some ways, my kids understand this, because they're like, my father is very hard to please. But in their pursuit of pleasing me, they are seeing the fruit. They are seeing massive returns on their fruits. And it doesn't matter the challenges. My daughter, it's my stepdaughter. She's not my blood. She's adopted. But she has medical needs. And she has medical needs to an extent that most people with her medical conditions would not pursue college. In some instances, they would never even leave the home. As Asher and I are chiseling away superficiality. We are chiseling away the world. And then we are putting up barriers and we're putting up blockers and we're fighting like hell to ensure that these kids that we have, they have to live in the world, but they are not the world. They are going to adhere to biblical code. Whether it feels good, whether it's annoying, whether it feels like it's too much. That is our foundation. That is where we start on everything. If we're discussing anything, we go through that channel. I take them through that channel. And again, in the Corey and Topanga show, the Boy Meets World show, it was like the second episode, I think, of like season 5 maybe. And again, they get to the altar, and then Corey says yes. Topanga says she can't because she wants the family to be there. And then only after the fact, right, the family has a talk, and then they come to an agreement of being supportive. But then I see that, and I go, wow, well, the damage has already been done, right? They made two young lovers feel insecure about their decision because it didn't add up to the world. Guys, in the ancient time, in the modern time, the number one goal when it comes to a significant other is you both want to be pure and clean. And you want to have one partner for the duration of your natural life. That, to me, is better than winning the Super Bowl. I mean, I could really care less. But, I mean, I'm saying I entertain these things because my humans entertain these things. That's it. If it was up to me, then, well, I'm saying, I'm trying to keep it straight. And I still have a lot of topicals to get to. But I do feel that I need to try to balance this too. I don't want to speak solely about topics that apply to the world and the spectrum there, because my true heart and desires do remain with my churches. Like, that's a fact, guys. And I need to get my churches behind righteousness. Like, my churches behind righteousness. And that to me is so big. That's so big. And that is what makes me happy. That's what pleases me. Because when I can look at a situation and I can assign an angel, that is like, in heaven, we're high-fiving. We're celebrating. I'm not exaggerating. When a couple is getting married and they're both virgins, we're celebrating upstairs. I'm not kidding you. Angels are singing. Sweareth I, saith Yahweh Elohim. Angels are singing when two virgins get married. There's even more angels singing when those two young ones, right? They're married, they're pure, they're virgin, they're starting their life out together, and then they decide to want to bring life into the world. I light up. The angels double down on their singing because they're so happy. And then I'm putting forth their baby. And depending on the life structure of this couple, right, there's going to be interesting moments for the team to come together to solve problems, right? Like me and my Asherah, we were faced with several challenges building the garden, and there were some components that, like, she knew, and there were some components that I knew, but self-admittedly to each other, she goes, babe, I would not have been able to do this without you, right? She physically couldn't do it without me. My Asherah, she's kind of a petite woman. Like, she's not very big. She's shorter than me, and I'm not very tall. I'm only, like, 5'8", and she's like 5'5", and, she's kind of tiny. So I'm saying, like, she couldn't physically manhandle, right, this big garden, right? She needs her husband to do that. And then likewise, I'm not very patient when it comes to trying to read instructions. As God, I kind of have a unique auto assist, or what we call in our house angel assist. And that is to support me in my journey, because I do have the largest burdens. I do heavy as the crown, right? And so my angel assist will help me with things that I can manipulate in the physical to help me, but never can I use it unrighteously. Like, I can't extort something. I can't go win the lottery. I mean, I could, but I mean, my own righteousness would never allow that. You see what I mean? My own righteousness is never going to be sacrificed on the altar of money, on the altar of convenience, on the altar of flesh, on the altar of desire, on the altar of sexual immorality, of the altar of I feel bad. I'm never going to change my righteousness based on someone else's feelings. Because if I do that, I am then okaying evil and wickedness to grow and prosper, and that's not happening. I look at that the same way as the garden. If I walk to that garden and I see a weed, if I see a weed, my first thing is I go to Asherah and I say, baby, hey, why do you got to weed this long? and she's going to go, oh my gosh, well, I just didn't see it. She just walks away and leaves it there. I'm going to say, well, where are you going? Why aren't you taking care of that? Right? In this case, that would never happen, right? Because she's tending that garden more than once a day. And in honesty and truth, she probably has her hands in that garden at least 3 times a day. She'll do it in the morning. She'll check on it around lunch. We take lunch together before we go pick up the kids. And then usually, in the evening when we're settling down, she's done with work. I'm done with, this is my work. I just don't get paid. So I work very hard. I work harder than anybody, but I just don't get a paycheck. Point is, we shut down, and then we start engaging with the family, and we start working down that road. But even then in the evening, right, she's tending that garden. So what are the chances of a weed getting out of control? There's not. There's not. What are the chances of a human getting led down the wrong road? What are the chances of a human being led by the world through media, through television, through friends, or through family? That's what I mean. It's falsity, right? The good uncle, he's fun, but that uncle's a bad example because he's an alcoholic, right? He's showing children that it's okay to drink excessively. That's not okay. That leads to severe consequences, right? Or the family dynamics, like, the kids look up to mom and dad, right? But dad is, tattling it, like, look at the Matilda thing, right? Like, Matilda is righteous in her way. I love that movie. That's actually Asher's favorite movie, is Matilda. But, Matilda is righteous, and she clearly sees her parents, like, they're frauds, right? They're fake, they're superficial, they're mean, they don't have love in their heart, especially for her, right? They're money obsessed, and then they're very much a model of the world. And Matilda is very much modeling intelligence. Intelligence leads to righteousness. Righteousness leads to good pastures. Good pastures lead to really good crops. And then when you are not only mastering the crops in which you grow, but then I, as your Elohim, am going to give you other things to pasture. Other things to pasture. I can't risk a faulty steward of my creation. I can't risk giving more and better if you can't manage what I've already given you. This is called managing your lot, right? And as Elohim in the Bible, it is I who give man his lot, or her lot. So, all right. Can't believe it's already been 47 minutes, but I'm going to take a break. I think Asherah is off her meeting in 1 minute, so I'm going to try to catch up with her, refill my drink, and then come back for topicals. And we're back. So, kind of refocusing, zooming out for a minute, and then coming back in. So why are these things important? Because, again, going back to, I'll try and do this in such a way that it will kind of tie everything up. So, the Puritans comes over to the United States, or to the New World, right? And they wanted to live a godly life led by me. And then you fast forward like 300 years or 250 years-ish. Well, 300, right? Because it was at least 100 years, maybe 350. I'm saying from like Plymouth Rock all the way till now. You see the dynamics of society begin to shift. And it doesn't shift where a big bad devil, right, descends on earth and then starts, doing wicked things. You see what I mean? It's a faulty understanding of what evil is. Evil is insidious. It starts with the wrong way of thinking, and then it is presented by people that masquerade as the light. So what does that mean? That means when we're going back to the Boy Meets World show, right? Like the parents are, the narrative is the parents are good in this one, right? Alan and whatever her name is. And for the most part, right? They are, right? They're decent parents. But then their lack of knowledge about truth when it comes to me and the right way to live, they make a crucial error. They shot down a path that I as God lay out in trade of what the world, no, the world needs you to sleep with other people first before you make a decision that big. The world needs you to go to Yale and to involve yourself in the world. That could not be further from the truth. And ultimately, what does that look like? Right? That looks like, let's say that plays out. Boy and girl don't get married. Boy and girl go separate ways. Boy has premarital sex, girl has premarital sex. He's got 5 relationships, she's got 5 relationships. If they ever did come back together, that's an energy exchangement that is forever going to haunt both of them. And there's an even bigger problem that if it doesn't haunt them, then there's again another issue there. Right? That means that you're not sensitive to spirituality, which you need to be very sensitive to. Because when you're sensitive to your spirituality, you're going to be sensitive to your angels calling you. You're going to be sensitive to energy, atmosphere. All these things play a huge role, right? I avoid most places like the plague because it doesn't matter how pious it seems. It's very impious, right? I don't even go to like church festivals because what do I see? I see greed. I see that people are wearing the crucifix and they're walking around, they're throwing trash on the ground, they're rude to each other, right? I see, and again, spiritually speaking, I can see through all these people's hearts, minds, bodies, and souls, and everything I see, I'm like, why are you even in religion if you're not trying to become good? If you're not trying to learn righteousness, then what are you learning? And in fact, I keep working that up to the top, and I go, oh, this pastor is reinforcing beliefs that they're saved by the blood of Jesus, and that basically it doesn't matter. Like, God doesn't care about whatever you do as long as you pour out the blood of Jesus. That's a blood libel. Like, this is pagan. Like, you know what I mean? I start to get like freaked out a little bit, like a cat in the water. I'm like, eh. So I'm saying I don't even do that because those places are unrighteous. You know, the last one I went to, we left. And not that there's necessarily something that's wrong with like beer or wine, right? In the proper setting, that's okay. Beer and wine at a Christian, in this case, I think it was actually Catholic. It was like a little fair thing, you know, and then the nuns were drinking. I didn't like that. You know, I didn't like that. And then the nuns got up and did like a cute little dance, like a booty shaking dance, because again, that's what the world expected. And I was fervently wrathful, very, very upset over this. And so that's what I mean, right? You know, I went to my son's school. This was years ago. Luckily, I have not encountered that anymore. But a couple of years back, I went to his school. They had some kind of like ordeal there. And they had like little dance teams from a local middle school. And the dance teams come out, and these kids are in like 4th grade. It doesn't matter what grade you're in. You shouldn't be wearing skimpy clothes. You shouldn't be banging your crotch on the ground. You shouldn't be, you know, giving even any type of like agreement with lewdness. It's perversion. It's disgusting. And it's being done by children. Why is that happening? Because there are perverts in society in places of high, or in schools. You see what I mean? It's the leaders. It comes back to the leaders. It comes back to this false Jesus narrative of the blood libel. You can shake your booty. You can pound your vagina. You know, you can do all these nasty, lewd things. And then it's like, okay, where does it stop? It doesn't. It doesn't. Then next thing you know, we're talking about gender. We're talking about men shouldn't be men and girls shouldn't be. You see what I mean? Is there is no stopping that train. There is no stopping that train. And here we are, right? We're debating trans sports. How is something that isn't even in the realm of sanity being debated by a Supreme Court? Why are we wasting a Supreme Court judge's time? Number one. Number two, at any point of a natural human being, are you ever even contemplating that something so seditious could be even remotely good for society? It's not. The music that is about violence, the music that is about sex, music that is about fornicating is some of the highest rated music in country, rap, hip hop, across the board. It's programming human beings to be immune to sin and to pursue it. Why? Because it drives your Elohim to wrath. When I am driven to wrath, the devil gets to sit back and go, ha ha, told you so. And why? Because humans are falling for sin in everything they do. They're falling for wicked and evil schemes because they think it's good. They think they're having fun pounding their vaginas on the concrete to some rap music in the 4th grade or 10th grade, or whether you're 10, 15, 25, 35, 45, 55, 65, 75, 125, it doesn't matter. Lewdness is lewdness, perversion is perversion, period. Just like a lie is a lie, an omittance of the truth is still a lie. Cameron the other night, he knows he's not supposed to be playing Roblox. So, very much like the world, what does then Cameron do? He doesn't talk to me about it, right? Then he goes on YouTube and now he's watching videos of Roblox. So I told him that's not allowed, right? Then the other night, I go to open his door. Well, he comes out of his door first. What's up, Dad? I'm like, what are you doing? Just watching videos. Just watching videos? What are you watching? Oh, it's got a cat in it. Oh, okay. So then I go in his room and I look. Oh, we're watching Roblox, but it has a cat. So because it has a cat, it's supposed to be okay in my eyes. No, that's wrong, and that was a lie. So Cameron then gets punished because omittance of the truth is still a lie. And he was obviously very upset about that. And then obviously I had to explain to him multiple times, and we had to walk through that walk several times for him to finally understand why it is against the rules, why I don't like it. And I can instantly see this in every human being. When they're exposed to sin and it's being okayed by a grandma, an aunt, by anybody in a place that a human feels is safe or is good guidance. And unfortunately, within the 98th percentile of the world, no human is righteous enough for my liking. And yet they're still giving directives to younger generations, which really, in fact, we're driving righteousness into the ground. So much so that we literally have lawmakers that are not making laws, they're breaking them. We have American citizens who have absolutely zero comprehension of the blood that was spilled and fought for this great country to have the liberties and the freedoms in which exist. And those liberties and freedoms are being not only bent, they're being broken. And I'll get there. I'm jumping ahead. So, we're already at almost an hour. So, starting at Iran. So, research the American Revolution. It should be comforting because the French did help the Americans in the end. It did take quite a while for the French's help to arrive. And America very closely lost the war, but obviously it all worked out for the better. In this situation, though, Iranians, this is your baby to birth because it is your revolution and you need to own it. And you do not need to be under a service or under a debt to the United States or anybody, right? You need to birth this baby, and there will be assistance coming in some shape or form, but that should not be what you're relying on, right? The American Revolution did not rely on the French. They asked the French's help, and at one point they even thought it was never going to come, but they continued, right? They continued. They got better. They strategized. They continued on with their campaign, and then eventually the French came in and then helped push out the Brits, and of course now we're great friends with Britain. But I'm saying these things you guys can't rely on us to birth your revolution, and then especially relying on the United States to birth a revolution to hand it over to a singular authority. That it truly does. It could spell disaster, maybe not instantly, but it could very well spell disaster down the road. So that's a very dicey situation. And at the same time, right, that interjects the Americas into potential serious conflict versus if the Iranian people are overthrowing, the evil empire, you get Khomeini, drag him out in the street, make an example out of him. Then, the IRGC, again, they wake up, smell the coffee. They need to join the revolution. So then everybody gets to partake in freedom, democracy. And what does that mean? That's what I mean. Then you have a lot of these talking heads that are for the Ayatollah. They're saying, rebellions, they're anti-God. No, that's false. Because what that means is that every citizen of Iran, being a citizen means you own a piece of your country. In a way, because that means that your voice matters. So if you're discontent, you get to take that to the vote. You get to help speak to your constituents. You get to work with leaders and city councils and other members of society to try to drive a narrative that you want as a person, that you want as a people, which flips the script on the kings or the dictators or the communists or the socialists, where the Hitlers of the world, the Ayatollahs of the world, the Putins, the Kim Jong-uns, right, the cheese, they are in their minds like little me's or something, right, where what's good for them will then eventually be good for the people. Most of the time, that's not the case. And that's not the case. And a lot of times it's because the separation of class is so great. In these cases, you have the Putins, the Ayatollahs, all these guys are the top 1% of the money, and they don't really give a damn about anything else below that, you see? So a movie I'd encourage, if you can, watch one called The Platform. And The Platform is a very gut-wrenching movie. I haven't seen it in probably 8 years now. I might have to do a rewatch, but it's very hard to watch. Very hard to watch. For me, it's very hard, at least. But basically, the movie is really, really good. And it starts with, there's this, let's call it like 100-story maximum security prison. There's no windows. And then there's basically just like, call them 10 by 10 rooms. 100 rooms, or 100 stories tall. And the very, very top, the first floor, there's this huge, like, elevator. But it's like an elevator plate. Like, and there is tons of food, like more food than virtually you could eat, like. And so it starts at the very top, floor 1, and then there's 2 people to a room. So the 2 people on floor 1, right, they're freaking loving life because they get this platform lowered. They're eating chicken, steak, lobster. Oh, lobster's not good to eat, but I'm saying, like, they're eating crazy good. And then they have like 15 minutes to eat as much as they want. And then the platform goes down. Then floor 2 is like, okay, well, there's a couple of chicken bones that we're eating. You know what I mean? They're kind of parsing through the things that were already eaten by the top guys. So they're trying to eat in between that, but they're still pretty good. Like, they're like, yeah, it's like a buffet. It's been nibbled on. Anyway, this happens, and then floor 3 gets a little worse. 4, a little worse. 5, a little worse. And by the time it gets to, like, the 30th floor, now people are, like, eating. And that's another thing. Like, people's from floors 1 through 10, so unsalty, so unsultry, so unsavory that, they cared so less about the floors beneath them. They were peeing on the food. They were shitting on the food. And by the time it gets to like floors 30 and 40, there's virtually no good food left. It's either pooped or it's piss soaked, or it's bones. And then even then, right, they're starving at this point. So they're eating the bones. They're breaking them off in their mouth. And I mean, it's so crazy. And you're like, oh my gosh. But then in the movie, it starts to make you think, well, if floor 1 just took a small portion, floor 2 took a small portion, if you have actually more than enough food to cover floors 1 through 100, and it didn't take any effort. It actually took more effort to be bastards, to be wicked, to your brothers than it did to just do the right thing. Do you see? And then by the time it gets to like, I don't know, like the 80th and 90th floors, most people are dying because there's nothing left, right? Even the bones have been eaten. So they're dying. They're dying. And in some cases, when there was just like one bone left or whatever, they're killing each other over that food because they're starving to death. And it's a good example of why dictatorships, by their very existence, are not good. Why communism isn't good. Why socialism isn't good. Because it puts the control into floor one, and then everything floors 2 to 99 are all dependent really upon the directive of floor one. And floor one could never understand floors 2 through 99. They can't, right? A democracy is where you remove all those floors and you have just one massive pallet of food, and let's say the equivalent square foot, but it's all on one level ground. And the democracy is kind of like caging off the food until everybody in the room can talk about it and discuss a way, how is everyone going to be able to get nutrients, food, healthily, and then we're going to put rules in place. No pissing on the food. No crapping on the food. No killing anybody over the food. We're going to have an elected people that is going to distribute the food. They're going to be managing this because we trust them. They're going to ensure there is no pooping, there is no peeing, there is no fighting, there is no killing, and that all people are going to have an equal opportunity to eat. That is a democracy versus a king or a dictator that you're dealing with the maximum security prison where the elevator goes from the top all the way to the bottom. And the people at the bottom have no chance of going to the top. The people in the middle have no, you see what I mean? They're stuck. Based on their placement, they're stuck. A democracy, it opens the playing field. And then that's when it says innovation's super important, because if you're innovating, right, you're going to help contribute positively to society, and society is going to be able to reap the benefits of those things. So Iran, again, highly weigh your options when it comes to your next move. I do truly believe that, you know, Iranians, if you do this, you own it. That's a great thing. You don't, and I'm not saying we're not going to help. We are. But don't rely on America to be your savior. If you need that, then you're welcome to go into prayer, intercession. My name is Yahweh Elohim. That is what I hear prayers on. And I'd be happy to assist people on an individual level. But as I said, right, I'm getting away from the national God game, because it was supposed to be done with Israel, and out of truly some of the finest people when it comes to righteousness, that if even the Jews balk it up, I don't really stand much of a chance of having a national righteous nation. I'm saying if the Jews can't do it, it's very unlikely that anyone else can. So number 2 in line for that is America and the Christians. And that's my nation, right? Self-proclaimed, one nation under God. I am that person. And so it's my responsibility to whip America back into shape, get righteousness on the top frontal mind, and then give people a solid understanding of good versus evil so they know how to avoid sin. And sin is usually never introduced in large quantities. It's usually introduced seditiously. It's small spoonfuls. It's the Korean Topangas being confronted with their parents, who they see as a guiding light, but their parents are ignorant to truth and fact and heavenly things, so their parents lead them astray, and no one knows, because they're humans, they don't have that ability. Only I have that ability to then see their future that they're going to take and all the problems that come with it. And then humans, most of the time, are very reactive, right? So if you were to follow around the Corey and Topangas of the world after they took the wrong advice, right? That's what I mean. Then you would have a 10-year gap of Corey and Topanga. Oh, maybe he had a unwanted pregnancy, they had an abortion. Now that's on his and her conscience. And then Topanga's over here, maybe she got knocked up with a guy she didn't want to marry. Now she's bringing a baby, hauling this baby around. Now she's trying to meet true love. And it's like at the end of the day, well, now they're almost 30. Now they're all old. And they're just now going to settle down with all their baggage. And then you want to know why the divorce rate's so high, because they're all fighting. Because they have put on the full armor of sin, because that's what the world told them was the best thing to do. They've got a 6-figure education in finances or business or doctors, and that's another thing. People look so highly upon their doctors, and it's like, you do understand that man or woman is still a man and a woman. They're still faulty too. You all need to clean it up. And this starts at the learning center. What is a church? It is a learning center. It is a gathering place for the righteous to teach righteousness. It is a gathering place to hold you religiously accountable to yourself and the community. If a pastor, a preacher, a teacher, a priest, and Pope Leo, I would love to develop a sound relationship with you. As your Christ, I'm genuinely asking to have a sound relationship with you. I have no hatred in my heart for anyone, and that's a fact. But I do have anger in my heart for people that don't know what they do. They know not what they do. They know not what they do. And that is sometimes the most painful thing. Because when people don't know what they're doing, and they can't see through my eyes, it's so frustrating, because I'm like, the decisions you're making right now are going to screw you later, and you're about to cause yourself a ton of problems because you're forming to the expectations of the world. It's difficult. It's difficult. And I don't have any friends. I've never had friends. Because, humans in general are sinful. And that's why you need the teachings. It's why you need the learnings. It's why you need to know very stark contrast what is good, what is evil. Unfortunately, that's what I mean. The world is selling these stupid versions of evil, and people are walking around looking out for falsities, expecting that to be the devil. Guys, I'm explaining to you what the real evil in the world is. People look, for example, and I've looked at hearts and minds in this, right? People have looked at my videos and they have tried to determine, is he evil because of what? Maybe there's a raven that's on a light next to my bed. Is a raven evil? Tell me why a raven is evil. And you can't use the excuse that, well, in all of our modern movies, there's a bad guy with a raven. Whose inception was that? Mankind. Is mankind insidiously evil by nature? A lot of times, but not really. People aren't born evil. They're not born wicked. They learn it from their parents, and their parents' parents, and their parents' parents. And usually there's a large gap of righteousness, right? Because a selfishness takes over. A raven is a beautiful bird. A raven is also who gave Elijah company in the wilderness. The raven is also who went out from the ark to tell Noah when dry land was available. The raven in biblical culture and in heaven culture is a very revered and respected bird for its intelligence, its beauty, its strength, and in times it can speak. Billaricus is my personal raven. He lives right here. And he's been with me for at least 9 years now. I've moved 3 times in 9 years, and Billaricus has been with me ever since. And Billaricus to this day, it's so funny, because, I'm not Elijah, I'm Yahweh, but, Bill Ruckus will bring me peanuts. He brought me a bagel once. He actually brought me a McMuffin, not all the way intact, but he brought me like the top of a McMuffin once. So, you see what I mean? Using superficial, artificial visual cues to give you inclinations of evil is really, really low-level thinking, and it is dangerous to human beings. Because then, that's what I mean, people would then say, well, there's a raven, that's scary, because media has falsely taught me that somehow a black bird created by God and given to Elijah as company, and then the bird speak, like, where's that evil? It's not. It's a bird. You see what I mean? I do these things too because I want people to critically think. Now, what is evil? Removing natural barriers that are supposed to uphold godly framework, such as male and female relations. Because if you are two males together, you're not going to fruit and multiply. You're not going to ever be in covenant with me. So that means you're just going to be a living creature on my creation. And by your unholy matrimony, you're never going to receive the promises. You're never going to receive the gifts. And instead, you're going to be like one of those lint removers, right? You're going to begin gathering people that, like-minded. And next thing you know, you have an entire culture filled with lesbianism. With beautiful women becoming butch. And most of the time, it's not even their actual desires. Most of the time, when I'm checking hearts and minds, it is not their actual desire. Most of the time, it is because they were introduced into it culturally as a young child. A lot of times, it was even through rebellion, through whatever. But it's actually not even who they are. It's not even who they want or what they want. They don't know what they want. If they were in a good, sound church that stood behind truth above all else, and again, when I say that, even congregations that are using Jesus, then you should have hold at least periodically. If you're using Jesus, periodically go through and tell your congregations, hey, we're using the name Jesus because that's universally understood and accepted, but we want to point out the fact that Jesus' name is actually Yeshua. Yeshua's name is a derivative of Yehoshua. Yehoshua was the very first Messiah that Yahweh stepped and entered into. Malach Yahweh, the angel of the Lord, stepped into Joshua, who was Hosea. Then he became fully Joshua. Yahweh is salvation, or Yahweh is deliverance. And then the second appearance of God on earth came when it came to Jesus. His real name was, again, Joshua, linguistically. And now, to only expect in the third time in the third epoch that it would be Yahweh and Joshua. That is your Christ. That is me. And I don't really care about doctrine. I don't really care about theology. I, again, do not even like the New Testament because I don't think it carries the situation right. And there is a little bit of a difference between each and every time. There is a little bit of a difference between each and every time because now in the third time, right, it's like I'm fully Yahweh. I'm not turned off and turned on. I'm not like activated. Like I carry the blessings and the burdens all in the same vessel. So, anyway, moving on. And secularism, right? So a lot of groups are secular. I don't understand, and I'm never going to explore this, but I don't understand why there's like Methodists, why there's Calvary, while there's like Haredi Jews. Like I don't understand why there's so many sects. S-E-X-T or S-E-C-T, sects, not S-E-X, sections of my religions that are fractured and then they fight with each other. And I feel like I just constantly am trying to get to roots, truth, and the salt. But all right, I'll take a 5 and then we'll come back and continue on. Okay, and we are back. Hopefully this will be our final part. So, going back into it, is the 10 Commandments are your security guarantees. And by churches teaching on the foundation of the commandments, and then explaining why, and then expanding that. And as a pastor of a church, right, what is your actual job? What is your actual job? Your job is to ensure that, number one, you are a model, being Christ-like, like me. You should put righteousness above all things. And it is not a sin to not dress up for church, but church is not a place of casualty. It is not a nonchalant thing. You should be dressing appropriately to show up to learn. And you should be comfortable to ask your pastor or your preacher or your reverend or what have you, priest, it doesn't matter, any person pulpitting, you should be approachable and you should be giving biblical advice, not worldly advice. So in the Topanga and Corey situation, let's say that the episode, let's say I as God went into the episode and I changed it, and sometimes I do. But not often, because I'm using them as my own learning tools, but I am reverse learning human society, and I'm reverse learning how roots and seeds have ended up where they're at now. Because I have to go back through, I gotta follow the trail, and I gotta find the root. So most of the time, these roots are because people that are assumed good are actually providing bad advice. This bad advice is then sprouting very small seeds of evil, and then eventually it comes to catch up with them, and then that's what I mean, right? So going back to the Corey and Topanga thing, let's say that the scene is how we've explained it. The parents, they freak out, right? Because the world tells them you should have multiple partners before you settle down. You should go to Yale and live your life. Guys, living your life in sexual sin is not living your life. That's living your life for sin. And sin does not get you into the kingdom of heaven. Why? Why, again, does the blood libel of Jesus do nothing? Because if you don't understand how to act in the garden, earth, how am I, as Elohim, ever going to bring you up into my home and trust you to act? Because if I went through the trouble of just saying, yep, you used the blood libel of Jesus, and yeah, you're good, man. Come on in my house. You can trash it. Yeah, you can try to make love to my angels, like, you know what I mean? Then it would no longer be heaven. It would no longer be precious. It would no longer be holy. It would no longer be a sanctuary for your soul to either rest or to find a purpose. Because you need to know how to act. If you act terrible in the garden, you're going to act terrible in my house. Do you understand how that computes? So your earth experience is all about learning how to act. And as the old adage goes, right? Well, if you wouldn't do it or say it in front of God, then don't do it. And if I said that the man is to leave his mother and become one with his spouse, and then the spouse, the husband and wife, are to be forever interlocked, that begins the journey with me as their Elohim, but then with two adults. So let's replay the scene. So let's say that instead of the parents freaking out, let's say the parents said, okay, Corey and Topanga, before we do this, let's go visit Rabbi. Or let's go visit our preacher. Let's talk to Pastor John. And let's say the scene plays out where they drive as a family. Mom, dad, her dad, or whatever the family dynamics, right? But I'm saying the players involved, they go and set an appointment to speak with Pastor John. Now, if the parents are walking in going, Pastor John, you need to tell Corey and Topanga that it's not right. It's not appropriate for them to get married at 18 out of high school. And if Pastor John is using the lenses of the world and goes, yep, that's right, Corey and Topanga, you guys need to stay split. You need not to get married. You need to go and pursue the flesh. You need to go pursue unrighteousness. You need to go out there and get that education. Then you are doing me, your God, wrong. You're doing me wrong. You're purposely sending my sheep out to the slaughterhouse and they don't know it, and you're doing it with a smile, which that's where I get beyond wrathful, almost incomprehensibly wrathful, where I can't even speak properly because I'm so mad, because it's so crystal clear from my vantage point, right and wrong, and it is so baffling that on the human landscape, most humans don't really know what good and evil is. They don't. And I struggle with this on the home front in some ways, right? Because my kids are going to school. They're constantly rubbing shoulders with, well, this popular kid acts and does this. So then they begin modeling after this. And then it's like, as God, as dad, I'm catching it and I'm freaking out. Like the cat getting a bath. And for example, right? Like I do have an issue with the movie Wicked. Because they're trying to use a term that should be taken deadly serious, and they're spinning it. That's what I mean. They're spinning the narrative that, no, man, getting married's old-fashioned. Go out and have as many girls as you can. Wrong, evil, seditious, nefarious. Demon bait, guys. Demon bait. And then what happens, right? If you're pursuing demons and you're pursuing demon bait, what are you going to end up with? If you go catfishing, you use catfish bait. What are you going to end up with? Catfish. Right? Versus that conversation with the Pastor John and the show would have been, Pastor John goes, well, Corey and Topanga's parents, I'm going to explain to you what the Lord wants. The Lord said, the man needs to leave his mother and cleave to his wife, and they're going to become one, and then they are going to receive the promises of Almighty God, and then angels are going to walk their path with them. And that's when he says, I advise you young people, let's, come to our young couples small group, right? Or come to newlywed small group. Reinforce biblical principle, because that is going to be your shield. That is what's going to help 5 years down the road when an unsavory situation may happen, how the Corys of the world, the Topangas of the world are going to be able to avoid sin. They're going to be able to avoid spiritual or emotional damage done to each other. That's really what it is, guys. Most humans are damaged goods now. You've damaged yourselves through interchangement of energy, thinking that it's okay. It is not okay. It's very toxic to a human being to exchange energy at a subatomic level, such as intimacy, sexual intimacy, and doing it lightly as extracurricular activities. There's nothing more. I mean, again, I don't like to play the Satan game, but I do, because it's the easiest way for me to get you people to understand. Right? When you are disobeying the commandment, you are walking down the road of the devil. And you are saying, I forsake God because my flesh tells me this. I forsake my future in heaven because of my fleshly desires. Guys, that is what you're modeling after, is actually the fallen angels. The fallen angels, believe it or not, were beautiful. They're beautiful. They were, and I hate to say this way, because they were so much more righteous than the current modern man ever could be. But they let their flesh, when they got into the flesh, they let that drive them to be disobedient, because they thought in their mind, how could this be bad? It feels good. How could this be bad? It's my desire. God don't know anything. He's just a stubborn, mean, wrathful old man. No, that's not the case. I mean, it can be the case, but I'm saying, overall, I only give that side of me to evil and wicked. That is who and what deserves my wrath. And I make sure my wrath is very intense, that it burns fervently, because I want it to encourage people, not encourage, but I hate to say it, but I want to scare people so far away from sin that I want my human beings to be so frontal-minded about the commandments, about biblical living, godly living, obedience to those things. Because if you do, the promises are so much greater. Your afterlife is so much greater. The legacy you leave behind in earth is so much greater. It truly is. And so if Pastor John tells the parents in this situation, hey, I'm encouraging them to get married. I am so happy. I know God is happy that you two are virgins. You two are madly in love. And you're making educated decisions before you transition to the next part of your life. Because imagine you're going to go through the most sometimes difficult parts of your life. Being a young adult in college, you're exposed to sin. You're exposed to all these things. You need a ride or die. And you need a ride or die that is going to be your significant other. As I said, in the situation, right? Yale isn't going to comfort Topanga if she's going through a loss in her family, right? Yale isn't going to comfort, Corey in a situation that, I'm saying no matter what you cut it, the Yale path is only an avenue to gain money. What is money? Money is only a placeholder for people, places, and things to be able to organize. That's really what money is. It's an organizing thing. It's saying, okay, I need to ensure that, I have something to show for the transaction that I just made. That's what that's about. And it keeps track of it, right? So I sold you, 100 pounds of flour. You gave me $100 because now I got to take that $100 and go buy, whatever I'm saying, like I need to go buy more seeds to then plant more wheat to then grind more flour. It's a placeholder to ensure transaction. Anytime it's being hoarded or used wrongly, then that's fraud. And as President Trump is directing the states as we speak, this was teed up last night, or actually, no, what's today? Wednesday. This was teed up Sunday night. I put that down in the Word, and when I say I put it down in the Word, what that means is there's an angel assigned to President Trump, an angel assigned to J.D. Vance, one assigned to Rubio, one assigned to Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson, I'm starting to warm up to you a lot more, actually. Mike Johnson has really been a voice of not only reason, but he is becoming kind of my why. Why do I like Mike Johnson? Is because he, personally speaking, not that he's saying anything, but in his heart, mind, body, and soul, that man is truly trying to be as righteous in every department he freaking can. That makes me glow. That's what grace is. That's what makes me glow. That's when I'm like, oh my gosh, you're getting it. You're getting with the program. And then I'm keeping an eye on things. The angel is in contact with Mike Johnson, right? The angels that I have are assigned to these people that are carrying out my orders. They still have free will. President Trump, whatever he decides to do with Iran, I can encourage, my angel can whisper, but at the end of the day, he owns that. They all own it. Just like you all own your accountabilities, okay? So for better or worse, President Trump is going to own the Iran situation if he decides to act. The Iranian people are going to own their situation. The situation with Greenland, if President Trump goes against my advice and takes it militarily, that's still on the table for him. It is not for me. But again, if he does that, then he's going to have to own that. I'm not going to have any part of it. Backing back up. So the righteousness, right? It is so important. Because if my angel is trying to encourage and is trying to nudge, but if that human being is void of righteousness, they don't understand it, then it's like, if you know computers, right? It's a 404 screen. It doesn't compute to them. So then they can only go based on whatever, multiple choice options they have. You know what I mean? And if there's not a, A, sin, B, kind of sin, C, like, there needs to be the multiple choice option that says, do not sin and listen to God. And people need to be checking that box all the time. But based on their preferences, based on their flesh, based on fill in the blank, most of the time they're not checking that box. They're checking the, I need to do this because the world tells me, the flesh tells me, my own heart tells me. Well, your own hearts are faulty a lot of times, so you need to recheck that. As I said, reiterating, right? If your eyes are undressing a man or a woman, then you need to cut your own eyes out because you are sinning. Truly, right? If your right or left hand is causing you to sin, then you better cut it off. Because there's nothing in the world that is worth sin. Nothing. Nothing. A true patron of heaven, would rather die broken, crucified, dead to the world, hated and mocked by the world, but would not sin. Job did not sin. No matter how much pain the devil inflicted upon Job, he did not sin, and he did not charge me for anything. He did not. That's a fact. That is a righteous man. That is a patron of heaven. And what? Job's earthly life, right? Compared to what Job is doing now? If I went to heaven, and I thought about this, if I went to heaven and I could somehow get a camera to work up in heaven and then I bring it back to replay it, I might try this and do an interview with Job. Job would probably have very, very little to even comment on his essentially his experiment with Satan. He wouldn't think about it, because in Job's life, he'd be like, gosh, like, my entire existence has been mostly blissful, has been mostly productive, has been mostly happy. The time that really Satan, kind of gave me his all I had to do was rely on Almighty Yahweh, the Lord of Lords, the God of gods, the creator of heaven and earth, the commander of the angels. That's the guy. That's the God. And guess what? That's the best security policy. That's the best insurance policy. That's the only guiding light. That's the only guiding light that can cut through the false light of truly charlatans. Right? It's sad that when, your preacher rolls up in a $90,000 Mercedes to then have a complete session on Sunday about how we should be tithing God's 10%, but yet I don't get a check. I don't get anything. I don't get a fruit basket. I don't even get a happy birthday on my real birthday. I don't get anything. No, it actually goes to your pastor's wallet. And then it's like, okay, fine, pastor. If you're going to be a rich pastor, well, show me the plow marks of the righteousness you're planting. Oh, there is none. Oh, because you're teaching about grace and the blood of Jesus, and you're teaching about Mother Mary, and you're teaching about all these wonderful things that your patrons have no idea what it's about. They're showing up hoping to get their church cards stamped. That's insanity. That is insanity. A pastor, a preacher, a priest, anybody that is in my religion, Saturday or Sunday, your focal point needs to be learning righteousness. You should be walking out of that service where you've learned righteousness, you felt comfortable to approach your representative. So that's another thing. I don't like megachurches. I despise a megachurch. If I, as God himself, am drowned out of a megachurch that I can't even get to the pastor or the preacher because they're superstars, you would think I walked into a damn Rihanna concert. People at like Grace Family, Pastor Craig and Pastor Matt Roden, I thought they were great speakers, great motivational speakers. They should be up there with Tony Robbins. But every time I'm looking in Hearts and Minds, they are all just obsessed with the preacher. They're all there to see Pastor Craig. They're all there to see Pastor Matt. They're all there to see Rabbi so-and-so. They're all there to you're not there. That's not what that's for. You're there to get to know me. You're there to know what I want from you as a person. You're there to learn your path in life. And you're there that if you need to stand up after Sunday, when the last song is played and everyone says hallelujah for Yahweh, and you get up and you go, you know what? Imagine the Corey and Topanga situation. Imagine that's when, Corey's dad goes, hey, hold back, crew. We're going to go talk to Pastor John. Church service just ended. He'll be heading down to the banquet hall for Sunday lunch. Let's grab him real quick. That's how personal your religious teacher, pastor, preacher, whatever should be. That's how accessible they should be. You shouldn't need to make an appointment, come back on Wednesday to get 5 minutes of FaceTime in front of your pastor. If that's the case, choose a different church. If your church is too big that you don't know every name of your patrons, then your church is too big. That's where You need to, like Joel Osteen, right? Wonderful speaker, Tony Robbins level speaker. Joel Osteen should remove the stadium level church. He needs to teach a flock of, maybe 200. And then give the other thousands to those that can manage it. Those that can manage it. That's gluttony in terms of clergy work, right? What a farmer, if it's a farmer and his wife, let's say it's me and Asherah, right? And we got 50 heads of sheep. That's quite a lot for two people. That's 50 heads of sheep is a bit, right? Because when it comes time to shaving, that's my job. When it comes time to check the gums, that's my job. When it comes time to check the hooves, that's my job, right? Or me and Asherah's job. I'm saying 50 heads of cattle for sheep, I'm saying that's quite a bit. It would be greedy and gluttony that if I said, you know what, babe, let's get 500 heads of cattle. Well, I would either need more help, but if I tried to do it on my own, then that means that my sheep in one way or another are going to suffer. Because that means I'm not going to be able to go and fleece every sheep. Fleecing means removing their wool at the appropriate time. So you're using it as a resource as a human being, but then the sheep also is better for it because then they grow it back, right? Sheeps need to be fleeced, and their hooves need to be checked. If there's a crack in the hoof, you gotta sand it down. I'm saying there are maintenance requirements for however many sheep you have. So it's very also angering to see mega churches that they don't know their flocks. And then they try to superficially say, well, fill out the welcome card and then we're going to email you. I don't want you to email people. The world is already full of artificial everything. Artificial food, artificial frickin' everything. You need to be a person. A living, breathing representative of Almighty God. That means you need to wake up early, pastor. You need to get up early. Make your prayers. Make your provisions for your sheep. You need to dress up because you know what? You're setting an example. Preaching in jeans and tennis shoes turns me off as Elohim. That's slouchy. And I don't appreciate it. I don't appreciate it. Because there's something to be said about discipline. Discipline is huge when it comes to me. That means Sunday morning, the family's eating breakfast earlier, right? Not my family, I'm saying a church-going family. There's church in my house 24 hours a day because I'm Almighty God. That's why I don't go to church. And honestly, every time I go to church, I get mad because it seems like everything is wrong about whatever church I go to. It doesn't matter. So, anyway, okay. Where am I at here? Okay. I'm already at an hour and 40. I got to get this below 2 hours. So, fine pointing. Riots are not protests. So understand that. Rioting is not protesting. And neither is illegal threats to law enforcement a protest. Because illegal threats to law enforcement is being a domestic terrorist. Okay? That's terrorism in what it is. You're terrorizing federal agents trying to carry out the dutiful law of the land. I agree with President Trump. Withhold all funds from sanctuary cities. It is their fault the problem exists, and it is their responsibility to fix it. And if they again continue to refuse to fix it, then yes, the U.S. government will withhold funds from your city. Now, citizens that it should not be punishing, this is what I mean. Citizens that are like, I'm an American citizen, I'm a normal person, I'm with God, I'm with Trump, I'm with the side that we shouldn't have illegals. What can I do? You, sir or ma'am, need to be vocal as well. You need to be showing up to speak to your representatives, number one, and explain to them the law, because if they're not lawmakers and they're not law abiders, which these Democratic nominees or these Democratic representatives of these sanctuary cities are not, they're law breakers. As I said, as Elohim, I don't dislike or hate anybody for the religion you follow, the color of your skin, the accent you may have, where you were born at geographically, none of that. If you came from a good family or a bad family, none of that matters to me. What matters to me is, are you a good person or are you a bad person? Do you do things right or do you do things wrong? Do you seek righteousness or do you seek the flesh? Do you seek truth or do you cling to superficiality. Why I am ardently against people calling me Jesus or even using this false name is because it's false. There's no reality that I as God am ever going to accept a falsity. And it's not that I'm even accepting this Jesus thing. Every time I do, I'm providing a teaching on superficiality, right? And if you're having to try to explain to me, Elohim, your sin or your lawlessness or your lack of understanding, that's a you problem. Listen to me, your Elohim. If you can't take the heat, then go find a pastor who can break it down for you. Hopefully you can trust the pastor. That's where this starts, at the teaching level, right? Rabbis that are controversial need to stop being controversial. You need to be an enlightener. Enlighten people about ethics, about moral fiber. That is the crux of reality in which exists. We can have a good world, or we can have an evil, decomposing world. So, riots are not protest, neither are illegal threatenings to law enforcement protest. That's terrorism. Peaceful assembly. Does anything seen on TV or elsewhere look peaceful? No, it doesn't. What I see is violence. I see taunting the police. I see gatherings to incite violence, gatherings to slander the federal government, slanderizing law enforcement officers that are trying to carry out their duty. You're wrong, and you're working wicked and evil upon a land that many thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions actually, from the Revolutionary War all the way until now, husbands and brothers, sons and daughters have died for this country. They have laid down their life. And so many of the same federal officers that are being assaulted by rioters, you're not protesters, you're rioters, that are trying to run over law enforcement, over 50% of these federal agents are ex-military. That means that they now are serving the citizens of the United States of America, only to be now put in harm's way by illegals protected by non-law abiding elected officials that were elected by illegal immigrants that shouldn't be here in the first place. This is America. This is the United States of America. This is not Mexico. This is not Venezuela. This is not Iran. Hopefully a new Iran is going to be better. My point is, this stuff does not fly. And it is not going to fly. So if you're going to be upset that the money's removed from sanctuary cities, then you need to go and petition your lawmaker. Better yet, why don't you yourselves open up federal cases against people like Jacob Frey, who needs the bozo nose, right? Or Gavin Newsom. I mean, hopefully Tim Walz is going to be 10 feet under the federal pen after we're done with him when it comes to the court of law. But I'm saying there are many more, right? The Clintons. You got to be kidding me. The Clintons have been historically very wicked, seditiously evil. They are very selfish people, and they have been. And the Democrats constantly are using their power and prestige to dupe otherwise normal people. They're brainwashing people. And then through George Soros money, that's what I mean. Evil is very organized. Evil is very systematic in how it operates. And now, how did normal people turn into fervent, hateful, un-American domestic terrorists? The illegal and seditious left have trained their base like Pavlov's dogs. So, this is the call to action for my religious churches, Jew, non-Jew. This is where you make a stand, and you stand in righteousness. You stand in the Bible. You stand in my word. When your character can take you to where it is I want you to go, you are going to have no other choice but to see me for who I am. And when you do, that's a turning point for you. It's a turning point for you. Sin, the absence of sin matters more than all. Obedience unto those commandments matters more. Knowing my name is the chief among those things. Trying to break down a word a word play on word. That's what I mean. You guys are wasting your time dealing with things that do not save. They do not help. They do not do anything. They're stirring controversy. You're stirring up crap for the sake of crap. And that's what I mean. How evil could someone be to call God himself evil? That means that we have very, very stark contrast between what I know is right and what you as a human don't understand what is right. There's a big drift there. There's a big divide there. And we've got to close the gap. And my religious figureheads of the world are to be closing that gap. That is your job. So, transgender in sports, again, this is just another play by Team Evil, right? It started off 30, 40 years ago when gay people at one point, right, if they had, let's just say there was a part of the gay population that didn't want to be gay, but they were somehow gay. All right, we'll leave it there as I'm getting really, really long on time. But, and let's say that, right, society as a whole knew that was not good to God's standards. That was not looked highly upon, right? We definitely did not encourage our kids to be gay. In fact, 35, 40 years ago, right, kids were sweating bullets confessing to their parents that they're gay. And then there is a family trying to move forward to the best foot. We blew the doors off that one. Now people are like, oh, they're in second grade. Oh, maybe they're gay. Maybe they're gay. You know what? We're going to go ahead and buy our son some pink shit. I'm saying you guys are influencing evil and wicked behavior. You can't do that. You can't do that. So now we've done blown the doors off the gay, the lesbian, the faggotry, and now what's the next step? What does evil do? Right? Evil grows. Evil's a root. Now that next step is, well, let's just change the damn gender. Let's remove the penis and make vaginas, and let's add the penis to the vagina. What does that sound like to you? That sounds like human mutilation to me. That's what that sounds like. And people say, well, you don't understand. I'm God. I made people. I fully understand the human dynamic, and I fully understand that everybody given their lot because they have a life. They have souls. That means that everyone has a unique challenge. When you have overcome that unique challenge that you as a person have, you are going to reach this proverbial promised land, and you will begin. Look, some people are born with a wonderful problem of alcoholism. Sometimes there's only one reason that is. That is to bring them to me. Because guess what you find in the first part of the Alcoholics Anonymous book? You find the 10 Commandments that are hidden in there. People don't even realize that. And that's where it does, right? If a human being says sin is baffling, it's powerful, it's overwhelming, it's too much for me. But it's not too much for a human and their angel. It's not too much for a man and a wife that are doing righteousness. It's not too much for the Spirit of God to come upon you and your family. You don't do life alone. If you are, then stop. And then if you just so happen to be the unfortunate that you came from a sinful family, you were a bastard when you were born, you didn't even have an angel, and you had to claw your way out of the depths of hell itself to see the light because you lived in darkness for so long, you'll never go back to the darkness. And guess what? Then you can have a preacher or a teacher or a pastor standing in the threshold willing to welcome you into my family, God's family, Yahweh Elohim, who is I. That's the family. That's the heavenly family. And that is the destination of righteous men and women. But it is unfortunately not for the masses, because the masses are pursuing things of the flesh and calling them good. And meanwhile, they're eradicating roots of righteousness as fast as they fervently can, because this world wants nothing more than to rebel against righteousness. Because most of the time, righteousness doesn't bring you riches. Righteousness doesn't make friends. Righteousness isn't going to give you clout. Righteousness isn't going to give you crazy followers. But you know what it will do? It will ensure a relationship with me, your Elohim, and it will ensure that your next life, the eternal part of your life, instead of living forever in the garden, you get to advance into the home. You get to retire to heaven. What a great plan that is. So we will await on the President Trump Iran decision. Just kind of recapping. We went over the riots. Again, they're not protests, they're riots. Reaffirming. To protest, you need to be peacefully assembled for a legitimate cause. Obstructing justice is not a legitimate cause. And the whatever her name is, Mrs. Good, who got shot, right? Sorry, not sorry. You can't interfere with police work, number one. Number two, you can't use a deadly weapon. A vehicle is a deadly weapon. To even, that's what I mean. Whether her intent was or was not, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. Her actions were very blatantly anti-police. Her girlfriend, wife, that's what I mean. And where is this coming from, right? Lesbianism. They're obviously very secular. They're lesbians. They're Democrat lesbians. They're left-wing lesbians. They're demon bait. And that got him killed. I'll promise you right now, the officer that pulled the trigger has absolutely no problem with me. That didn't go on his heavenly record. Absolutely not. I've got 2 angels stationed by that gentleman as we speak, and his family. He is having a hard time with it because of the reaction of the world. If at what point do these Looney Tunes not get the picture? If you are injecting yourself in a dangerous situation because of your idiocy or your wicked and evilness, and you end up dead, that is not the fault of the law. If there are situations when the law extended itself beyond what is required or necessary, trust me, I'm the first one to speak on that. But in this case, that ain't the case. And in this case, if you want to protest, apply for the permit. And then pick your spot. Guess what? The very police in which you're protesting will come to your event to protect you. They'll make sure U-Hauls don't drive through your causes. They'll make sure people that disagree with your cause don't throw modal of cocktails. Do you understand the lawlessness? You're baiting good people to act irrational and scared, and then when an accident happens or an unintentional death occurs, then you're pointing the finger saying, now we have a martyr, now we have a martyr. Guys, that's silliness, right? And out of the same lips, you're trying to promote transgenderism, you're trying to promote women and men sport, or men and women in sports. That's degrading to women. That's degrading to women. There are major differences between the physicality of a man and the physicality of a woman. As Elohim, I understand that because I made them that way. Truly. Like, as a male, I'm a male. I'm not a man, I'm God. But I am a male, right? I like cuddling my Asherah, right? So she's naturally a little smaller than me. She's strong as a bull, but, right? The woman fits into the man like a puzzle piece. Because the nature of the male, of the husband, is to protect his wife. That's a fact, right? And the mother, right, is supposed to be nurturing. And these are the natural universal laws. That doesn't mean that a woman couldn't play football or baseball. A woman is allowed to do virtually anything a man can do. That's not a problem at all in my eyes. You could have sports teams equivalently 1-to-1. But there needs to be a boys' room and a girls' room. There needs to be guy football and girl football. And hell, if you want to go a step further and have co-ed football, then go right ahead. But men chopping off their reproductive organ to take hormone pills, grow their hair long, and then say, hi, I'm going to run the 50-meter dash. And I'm a fake girl. I look like a girl, but I actually have the mental body components of a man. The girls at that point if I was a woman in that situation, I'd just drop the sport. I wouldn't want to compete with that. Who would? Nobody. Like, America needs to wake up and smell the coffee, but the good news is I think they finally are. So, alright, it is almost time for kid pickup. Hopefully I covered everything. Let's keep our eyes on Iran. Let's keep our eyes on the Greenland situation. And we'll see what kind of movement we get. What's it, about 12:28 right now? Okay. So, eyes and ears. And teachers, preachers, priests, religious leaders. Get it right. Let's get it tight. Have a good day.